Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Financial Issues. It is wonderful to be here with you. Seth Udinsky here with you this morning, along with Sam Case and the FISM team here at our headquarters. Welcome to all of you. Great to have you with us today on this July the 1st, 2025, second half of the year 2025. Lots to digest today, so we'll be here with you for all of it. Happy to have you all today. Sam, it's good to have you, buddy. Are you ready for some fun today?
Yeah, I'm coming off of my cold, so hopefully my thoughts will be a tad clearer today than yesterday.
Well, you sound much more healthy, brother.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
very nice.
I was wondering how deep could my voice go, though. Yeah. Maybe I could be James Earl Jones if it got a tad worse, which could be kind of cool.
Fun. Well, great to be here with you all, folks. Question to ask at the top: what is the Genius Act, and how might it impact the landscape of cryptocurrency in the United States? Later on, financial issues contributor, financial expert Jason MacDowell is going to join me to discuss. I'm looking forward to that conversation a lot, and I hope you all are as well. Always great to have Jason on. Also, New York City is looking to fight discrimination and promote equity by discriminating. So he's looking to fight discrimination through the means of discrimination, particularly against rich white people. Genius idea, speaking of the Genius Act. Maybe this is the real Genius Act. We'll discuss that and the ridiculous nature of it. Also, what are some of the prime factors of cost of living? We got to all that and more on Financial Issues. Of course, your calls and questions as well. Our phone lines are wide open if you want to talk to me and Sam. 610-363-1110 is the number to call in. Again, 610-363-1110. Good to have you all this morning. Quickly here, folks, our show brought to you in part by our friends today at Preborn. We love what Preborn does. Preborn and bringing mothers and fathers to the gospel of Jesus Christ. We had a wildly successful campaign with Preborn this past May, and we're so grateful for all of you in contributing to this life-saving work. So if you want to learn more about what they do at Preborn, just go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. You can also go to financialissues.org, click that Preborn banner. That'll take you right to we just love Preborn. So, well, let's kick it off here, folks, with the markets. So yesterday, they were feeling pretty good to end a strong month and what many are really calling a second quarter comeback. It was a bit of a wild ride in the second quarter here. If you remember, folks, back in April, the indices were hanging around bear market territory. Investors were not pleased with that, and so the markets bared as such, but
the technical term is bearatory.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Thank you, Sam. They started trending back upwards right as the weather started to turn warmer, and so yesterday we kind of saw the culmination of that. So by midday, all three major indices were moderately positive. The Dow late afternoon, the NASDAQ was actually leading the way. Meta had a really good day yesterday. It was hitting record highs. By Wednesday's closing bell, the Dow Jones ended up as the winner of the day. All three indices were winners, but the Dow finished 0.63%. The S&P was 0.52%, and the NASDAQ 0.48%. The pre-markets this morning half of a year are slightly low. They are hanging right below the flat line. The NASDAQ is the lowest. The Dow is just below the flat line. The S&P is right around 0.3% or so as we start today. But it really was I think overall a good second quarter for the markets. Of course, a comeback. But once again, it kind of started out are looking like this year. I'm sure it will be a fantastic second half of the year, folks. Well, let's move now here, Sam, to what was once, I believe, one of the greatest cities in America, the largest city in America as it goes by population, but now sadly on a pathway to becoming just an absolute, and I say this with all kindness, a dump might be the correct word.
That might even be kind.
It might be kind,
depending on where this goes.
Yeah. So of course we're talking, folks, about New York City. There was some news this past week about a new mayoral candidate called Zohran Mamdani. Am I saying his name right, Sam? Zohran Mamdani?
I'm probably going to change the way I say it every time. Yeah, exactly. Mamdani, I don't know.
So he's putting forth a proposal to levy taxes upon rich white neighborhoods. Sam, what can you tell us about about this.
To be clear,
what I'm sure is a genius idea.
It's richer and whiter neighborhoods.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But he recently became the official Democrat nominee for the city. The current mayor, Eric Adams, I believe he's running as an independent. Yeah. I believe out of fear that he was going to lose that nomination. So we'll see where this ends up in the grand race overall. But yes, his plan is to raise property tax on what he calls richer and whiter neighborhoods. This is part of his broader plan to offset the city's shrinking tax base. Here he is talking about that over the weekend.
We went on your website and realized there's a policy proposal that says your plan, and I'm going to quote it for folks, is to shift the tax burden from overtaxed homeowners in the outer boroughs to more expensive homes in richer and whiter neighborhoods. Explain why you are bringing race into your tax proposal.
That is just a description of what we see right now. It's not driven by race. It's more of an assessment of what neighborhoods are being undertaxed versus overtaxed. We've seen time and again that this is a property tax system that is inequitable. It's one that actually Eric Adams ran on saying that he would change in the first 100 days. He's since sought to defend it and lost at every juncture in court.
And I understand you're saying we're simply describing the types of neighborhoods that would see these increase in taxes, and yet by invoking race, do you run the risk of potentially alienating key constituents?
I think I'm just naming things as they are.
Just naming things as they are, Seth. Ironically, Mamdani says the tax increase is needed because New Yorkers are fleeing the city. Listen to this.
I mean, we are talking about our tax base growing smaller and smaller each day, with New Yorkers leaving to New Jersey, to Pennsylvania, to Connecticut. If we do not meet this moment, we will lose this city. And our proposals are ones that are thought out. They are ones that are also clearly going to be funded by these revenue streams.
Now, I don't know how he thinks that this tax proposal isn't going to also cause people to flee the city. Think, gee, people are leaving because they don't want to pay the tax.
Right.
Let's raise the taxes even more.
That'll show them. That'll save the city. Let's tax them more.
We did it, Patrick. We saved the city, for the SpongeBob reference there. But yes, that's right. So I don't know if he's going to build a Berlin Wall around New York City to keep the rich people in, the rich white people in, but probably not, because Governor Kathy Hochul realizes this is a really bad idea just for this reason. So here she is.
I'm not raising taxes on people at a time when affordability is the big issue. I'm actually cutting middle class taxes. Even on the wealthy. I don't want to lose any more people to go to Palm Beach. We've lost enough.
Of course, this is just one of many of far-left policies by Mamdani, including city-run grocery stores, a $30 minimum wage, and also rent freezes, just to name a few, Seth.
Sam, thank you for bringing that to our attention, man. So first of all, folks, listen, you got to be cautious when people, especially politicians, say nice-sounding things like, for example, shift the tax burden. Shifting the tax burden is lib speak for discriminate against successful people through taxes just because they're successful. It's targeting successful people because of their worldview, which is based on what they call equity, which is just basically sharing all the wealth. It's socialism just wrapped in new wrapping.
But in this case, it's racist socialism because it's not like there aren't rich black and Asian and Jewish people in New York City.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And you could hear Mamdani kind of fudging his way through that answer. He didn't really give a clear answer on that one. But, folks, this is a man who's not hiding his agenda. He wants to make New York City a socialist whole where all citizens are completely reliant upon the almighty government to meet their every need. He may not know this, but a lot of those billionaires he hates are actually the ones who employ middle and lower class people. They provide jobs. They provide good things for the city. They provide services for the city. I never thought, Sam, I would side with Kathy Hochul on just about anything, but she's right in this regard. She's absolutely right.
Thought the same thing.
They
broken clocks
lose
right
people
twice a day, right?
That's exactly right. And here's what's most sad about this whole thing, Sam. I think thinking about it from a historical perspective, folks, this coming September, we will celebrate now the 24-year anniversary of one of the most terrible things to ever happen in our country. It happened in New York City in Lower Manhattan, where a conspiracy of violent Mohammedan degenerates murdered almost 3,000 American citizens in the Twin Towers in a span of about 90 minutes. The mantra from that horrendous day was never forget. It was never forget. Evidently, millions of Americans in America's largest city have forgotten. They're supporting a mayoral candidate who unapologetically upholds the same worldview, the same exact worldview, and even, some things that perhaps that original band of conspirators didn't have, socialism. But that same worldview that fueled those murderers on 9/11, who flew 2 jets into the Twin Towers, killing so many innocent souls. Folks, pray that God will have mercy on this city. New York City, listen, I'm no fan of New York City, but I want New York City to succeed because it's part of our country. It is one of the most important cities in our country, one of the most important in the world.
And I would say at times has been the greatest city in the world. At times
it has been. Absolutely. It was once our capital city. Our own Philadelphia was capital city. New York City was. And for so many years, it was once a great city, a mighty city of what I would call, like this idea of American greatness.
As recent as the 90s.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. This is a city that stands on the precipice of falling. And so we need to pray that God will have mercy on it. It's turned into a cesspool of godlessness, and we can only hope that God is not done with it yet. Boy, folks, a really good reminder, your worldview matters, and that's so very important, especially when you're in leadership like in politics. Coming up next, folks, we'll look at that question that we teed up back in the beginning of the show about cost of living, speaking of what's going on in New York City right now. A lot more financial issues coming right after this. How is Timothy Plan continuing to lead the fight as you guys now enter your fourth decade of leading this fight of biblically responsible investing?
We've been too silent for too long, and we can no longer be silent. You stand up, like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from losing all of our liberty. Yeah. It has to be fought for. I wish it didn't. And you can fight for it. You don't need guns and ammunition and that. You can fight for it, especially with your dollars, because it's always about the money. And when the money starts impacting people, they start paying attention. When we launched this, they said it couldn't be done, but here we are 30 years later. They said you couldn't get competitive returns, but here we are.
What a tremendous testament of God's grace.
Go to financialissues.org/Timothy Plans to learn more about Timothy Plan.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back, folks. Interesting conversation there in that first segment for sure. David Darlene saying this is talking about Mamdani, definitely a communist. I think I'd have to agree with you there, although he would say, Sam, that he's not, right? He would say...
Well, it's really funny, right? Because in that interview, he says, well, I'm not a communist, but there's a recent video of him saying, my main goal is to seize the means of production. So that's exactly what Karl Marx says.
That's exactly what
it'd be like me saying, well, I believe in the Apostles' Creed, but I'm not a Christian.
Right. Exactly.
I believe in everything Karl Marx teaches and says, but I'm not a communist.
Absolutely. And I want to impose all these communist ideals, but I'm not communist. Yeah. Folks, I mean, this is where, wisdom, discernment, so important to be able to have to see what people really are. Sadly, what we really are, truthfully, is sinners to our core, and that's why the grace of God is so beautiful. But once again, I'd urge you to pray for the grace of God to be evident in New York City and to protect them from this kind of really just nonsense form of government there. Well, Sam, we're talking about kind of a similar topic here, cost of living. We got an interesting question from a listener named Anthony a couple days ago.
Maybe Anthony lives in New York and he wants wants to know, right?
Absolutely. That's certainly an issue there. What's Anthony's asking here, Sam?
Anthony says, I feel like I should be able to answer this questions, but I didn't know what to say when I was asked about it the other day. Why is it that we all live in the same country, but the cost of living is not the same everywhere else? What controls the cost of living?
Anthony, that's a good question. I'm really glad you asked. Let me start with your first one there. So why is it that we all live in the same country, but it's not the same everywhere? So we do all live in the same country. However, you have to remember, and this might sound like a no-duh thing, but the United States is really big. It's a very, very big country. I'd go out on a limb to say that in some ways we're more like an empire than like a cohesive traditional nation state that you might find, for example, in 16th century Europe or something like that. We're a lot more like an empire. We're the size of one for sure. I mean, we're comparable to the Roman Empire, for instance. And speaking of the Roman Empire, actually, I think that's really kind of our closest modeled after sort of example in history. I would compare the United States as kind of, in many ways, almost a new Roman Empire. Obviously, we don't have an emperor, but certain things are very similar. One of them being the size, the other one being different.
You can tell
regions.
it in our architecture. You can
that's
tell
exactly
the founders were even thinking in those terms.
That's exactly right.
Perhaps the Republic,
statues,
not the empire.
Even with the language as well, like adopting the Latin language. There are some Roman kind of trends, through lines that find their beginning in the Roman Empire and end up finding their culmination with us as well. One of those also is that you have different regions, and those regions develop different cultural mores, and there's also different economic opportunities and limitations. So
Seth, I was listening to a podcast where there was this British guy who toured America, and they said, what was the one thing you took away from visiting America? He said he loved it, but he said the big thing he really took away is that America isn't really one country. It's a bunch of little countries with kind of this overarching structure, but the cultures are so vastly different from one another, they might as well be different countries.
Yeah, Sam, you're exactly right. In the Roman Empire, you had Germania that was different from Judea, it was different from Britannia, it was different from Gaul, it was different from Asia Minor, and then you actually see this in when the empire collapsed. The heirs of each region kind of became almost new civilizations themselves. The Western Empire became what we know as medieval Europe. The Central Empire became the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, and then the Asia Minor kind of Middle East region, that eventually became the Islamic world. And so each of those are radically different from each other. And again, Sam, you said it, it's the same in the United States. The Deep South is not the West Coast. I don't know if you knew this. The elites might not want you to know this. The Deep South is different from the West Coast, okay? New York City is not going to be the same as Louisiana. Okay, it's just not. It's wildly different. The Midwest is not the Northeast. We have many different regions, almost 50 different sort of mini nation states. We are one country, but with the size of it, with the different mores that come to the front, there can be a lot of different kind of workings out of that there. So, Anthony, from a 30,000 foot view, I think that's why cost of living is not the same, first of all, because we're so big and the different areas are just so unique. Now, let me pose to you a question here, answering your second question. If you make $80,000 a year in rural Western New York, do you think you'll make a pretty good living? Sam, you're actually from that region. Is that a pretty decent living in rural Western New York?
$80,000?
Yeah.
I'm not sure with inflation today. I mean, it would still be pretty good, but back when I was growing up, that was a pretty hefty chunk of change.
Yeah. So if you move eastern and you head to Lower Manhattan and you make $80,000 a year, you might live right above the poverty line. Am I right,
live
Sam?
in a pretty nice 4K TV box.
You get an amazing.
You go to Best Buy. You don't buy the 4K TV.
Absolutely.
You find one out back, and you live in the box.
You could get a good cardboard box for that salary. Obviously, there's differences there. That comes with cost of living. What exactly makes the cost of living unique from an economic perspective, Anthony? I think that's really kind of the core of your question there. Let me give you a few things here, and we just talked about one of them in this last segment. The first is policies enacted by elected officials. Different regions, especially when you're talking about major cities versus rural areas, are going to have different policies. Taxes is a huge part of this. Generally speaking, taxes will be higher in major cities because there's a certain luxury about living in major cities, living near businesses, different things like that. Oftentimes, there are other decisions made by local municipal officers that require different taxes, maybe not require, but these officers call for different taxes. Major cities, again, tend to be more expensive because there's often more taxes. You have public transportation. You have sports teams, which, by the way, sports stadiums are also built with taxpayer dollars, which I am certainly not okay with because it actually gives sports teams an unfair advantage over other businesses. But that's kind of why it sort of goes that way, is because of policies elected by these elected officials. So that would be one reason. That would be one sort of cause for this. I think another one that's important and is related to this, Anthony, is proximity to large business districts. So again, you're closer to a major city, chances are the cost of living will be higher because of the luxury of being close to business districts. People like to live near where they work. And if a lot of people work in a certain area, that's going to drive the cost of housing up. Many view this as a luxury. We have an example here in the Philadelphia area. We have something called the Main Line. So the Main Line runs from the county's westernmost of Philadelphia all the way kind of along this main rail line into Center City. So you might know, folks, if you're from a region that's not Philadelphia, Center City is kind of the old city. That's where Independence Hall is. That's kind of the really kind of like the nicer part of the city that's been around for 350, 400 years. The Main Line runs right into there, coming from the west. Now, here's what happens. Houses on the Main Line are far more expensive than, for example, living in the town called Coatesville, where I grew up in, which is further west. It's kind of right smack between Philly and Lancaster. And so there's less appeal there because you're further away from the metropolitan business district. So I think that's a huge part of this
it's
too.
Kind of a dump, but
that's true. Yeah, sadly, I love my hometown of Coatesville, but again, this is we're talking about New York. There's some similar things happen there too, unfortunately. But that would be one other thing, Anthony, is if you're closer to business districts, there's a luxury there. That's going to drive the cost of living up. And by the way, folks, when we're talking about cost of living, we're mostly referring to costs concerning housing, home ownership, but that also impacts gas prices, grocery prices, everyday items, different things like that. And usually they tend to fluctuate in the same way. So if house prices tend to go higher, usually what happens, not always the case, but usually what happens is those other things end up being more expensive too. One other thing, Anthony, I think is important is just geographical location in general. I think that's really important. Talk about location in real estate. Depending on what your particular state offers, certain cost of living expenses will be higher or lower. We've talked about gas prices a lot on this show. Gas prices, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, the national average in the United States was right around roughly $3.19 a gallon. So that was as of yesterday, June 30th. In Texas yesterday, now keep in mind, Texas, the oil industry's booming there. It's dominated for a long time. Gas prices tend to be more affordable. So yesterday's average in the Lone Star State was $2.77 a gallon. That's pretty good. But go to Hawaii, isolated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in the middle of nowhere. That's one of our states where everything needs to be imported. You know what gas prices was yesterday in Hawaii? $4.47 a gallon. So right there, location determines the difference between paying $2 a gallon for gas and change and $4 a gallon of gas for change. Certain locations just make things much cheaper due to ease of access and ease of importation. Megan and I have used in the past, we've actually used what's called a CSA. It's a crop sharing organization. And usually those crops that we buy, they're vegetables, fruits, eggs, they tend to be more affordable because they're locally grown. You don't have to pay the price of transportation. So that's just one other thing there, Anthony, is geographical location. And then I think the last thing to consider as well is entertainment and other luxuries also. Here's a common truism when living in the United States. Things are generally more expensive in a beach town. Why would that be, Sam? Why would things be more expensive in a beach town?
Well, not me, but most people want to live near the beach. I think the beach is a little sandy and humid for my taste.
That's right.
But most people
you're exactly right.
Disagree with me.
Most people like the beach. Most people want to live near the beach. So you pay more for the luxury of that location. This is another reason why most coastal major cities tend to be really expensive. Your New Yorks, your Los Angeles, your San Franciscos, your Miamis, they cost a lot to live in because you have the beaches, but you also have sports teams. You have the entertainment industry. You have other industrial things. You got the music industry. If you're going to Los Angeles, you have Hollywood, so that's the movie industry. And like it or not, I'm not a fan of it. I wouldn't want to live anywhere near these people, but people want to live near celebrities. They want to live near the music industry.
There's also opportunity there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. There's going to be jobs there, of course. But again, like we talked about earlier, you might make a pretty decent living elsewhere in the country, but you move to one of these major cities, you will be impoverished because the cost of living is so much higher. So,
Seth, is it fair to say a lot of this, maybe all of it, just comes down to basic supply and demand?
A lot of it does.
There's limited space, and where more people want to live in that limited space, it's going to be more expensive. If all the world was a beach, if that's all there was, beachfront property wouldn't be worth anything.
Right. That's exactly right.
We would all be paying
the same.
There would
no longer be a luxury to it because everybody has access to it. Sam, that's exactly right. People think it's a hot commodity. society to live in places like this. Same town as movie stars. You can drive 5 minutes to the beach. You can walk to the beach. That tends to be one of the factors for cost of living. So, Anthony, of course, to answer your question, there are some other things that go into it, but I think those are kind of some of the general considerations for it. A lot of it just has to do with what people generally like. And people generally like being close to work. They generally like convenience. They generally like luxury. And so if you've got those things in a certain location, that will tend to drive the cost.
And people are willing to pay more for what they like.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Anthony, it's a good question. And I do hope, folks, that you might take into consideration some of that stuff as well, especially if you're in a situation, look, you might be in a job where you make a good living, but you live in an area that is really expensive. You might consider sacrificing being close to your workplace, moving a half hour further away to be able to afford where you live. Just a thought. Obviously, you have to consider other things like interest rates and different things like that in a pretty tough housing market. But Anthony, it's a good question. I appreciate it, brother. Folks, Jason MacDowell joins me in the next segment. You're not going to want to miss it, as a couple geniuses talking about the Genius Act. We'll be right back after this.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
We're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
My name is David Hunsinger. I live in Edgewater Park, New Jersey. I came across financial issues by accident. I believe it was on a certain TV station at that time. I got interested in finding out more, so I went online to find out more, and that's when I became a more active participant in financial issues. I did have some interest in investing prior to getting involved with FISM. Biblical investing I thought was more important, so obviously I changed my approach. I know I'm much happier for it. I'm probably more at ease now. It's probably the best way to sum it up in terms of I don't necessarily worry about if this is going to happen, if that's going to happen. I don't worry about that. If I was to encourage somebody to participate in FISM, I would use myself as an example. I've been very pleased to participate. If God's happy, I'm happy.
Align your investments with your faith. Become an FISM partner today at financialissues.org.
One of the emphases of preborn has been ultrasound in two ways. An ultrasound machine if a pregnancy clinic doesn't have one, and then an ultrasound session, which we underwrite hundreds of thousands of those. We've seen over and over again the dramatic results that when a woman encounters her baby for the first time and hears that heartbeat, she realizes the magnitude of what's happening here, that there is somebody else, that's her baby. So this is why preborn pushes out ultrasound as much as we possibly can. Preborn has seen over 200,000 babies saved, over 59,000 people come to Christ, populating earth and eternity, life for this life and life forever. Save the baby's life, but save the mother's life so that she can lead that baby to Christ. If we're bringing people into this world and the mother doesn't receive Christ and the child is born and the child lives its life and doesn't receive Christ, this is not a good end. And so we have to have the gospel as part and parcel and really the heartbeat of what preborn is.
Welcome back to Financial Issues, folks. Great to be here with you today. We're having some fun on the show today, of course. We'll take a look at the markets a little bit later on in the show, but right now I have a very special guest. I always enjoy the chances that I get to have conversations on air with Jason MacDowell, one of our consistent contributors here at Financial Issues. Normally it's Shannon getting to talk to him, but every so often I get the chance to, and it's a lot of fun. So Jason, happy to have you today, buddy. We're just a couple of geniuses here, Jason, talking about the Genius Act. I'm excited for this. So we'll get into this right now, brother. Give us a sense of kind of what's going on here, Jason, when we're talking about this Genius Act, the congressional updates to it, what it is. Give us a sense of this here, brother.
Yeah, that's great. I'll reserve the genius name for you, Seth, here with this one, especially at the tail end.
That's very generous, okay?
Yep. So back in April of this year, actually 2025, we spoke of the Genius Act, and what I thought was once a dead bill in the Senate was revived with some adjustments and amendments. The Genius Act now has passed the Senate, so there's been a lot of traction with that, even to Trump wanting it with the BBB bill. So we're thinking this week is his goal. So Congress, I don't know if it's going to act on that. But on June 17th, the Senate passed the Genius Act overwhelmingly with bipartisan vote, 68-30. So they wanted this to go through. So this marks a significant milestone in advancing federal stablecoin legislation. So a lot that I talked about back in April was about defining payment stablecoins. These aren't investments. These aren't securities. These are payment cryptocurrency, essentially. Things that will replace the dollar as an option when you're purchasing items around the globe. And I'll make that make sense a little bit later.
Okay.
Here. So,
and Jason, really quickly here, we've heard about central bank digital currencies. Does this have anything to do with those, or is this something different?
It was an attempt to, but the idea behind it was decentralization from a central bank.
Got it.
Regulated by the government. Now, this bill is still going to have regulations by our federal government, so it's not going to necessarily be decentralized. It seems like it. It still involves the government. And that's essentially what's coming through. And of course, the government likes that.
Okay.
So
good to know. Thanks, brother.
This goal is to pass. They want to pass the Genius Act and get it through the House to Trump's desk with the BBB, with the big, beautiful bill. So by July 4th. So this week, who knows what could happen? We don't know what the House is going to do with it. So the Genius Act establishes a regulatory framework for payment stablecoins. It's defined as a digital asset, coins designed for payment, listed by a stablecoin issuer. We'll talk about that here soon. That maintains the coin will hold a stable value or one-to-one relative to a fixed amount of monetary value. Think like $1, $1 just called something a little bit different. So previously mentioned, we discussed holding the value based on gold or U.S. treasuries or dollars. Now, the amendments were to address some state regulation and out-of-state bank subsidiaries. Essentially what it wants is to expedite any review and establish existing banking essentially networks and laws across the states to chartered depository institutions, include trust companies. So really at the end of the day, they want to expedite this once it gets through to allow stablecoin issuers and for states to be able to communicate, plain and simple. That tells me speed. They want to implement this pretty quick, and that's what was added to the amendments. Now, the legislation also is going to head to the House. The House had its own sister act called the Stable Act. It focused primarily on keeping a dollar-denominated stablecoin payment. So it was basically keeping that there. Trump on June 18th urged the House to pass the Genius Act without any changes to the legislative text from the Genius Act. So what came out of the Senate, President Trump wants that to stay exactly as it is and get to his desk with the BBB. So that's telling me now that this administration is really supporting this. So that's kind of where it's at. I don't know if the House is going to clog it up and it's going to come after the 4th, but we know this administration wants to sign it all together. So there's some bills coming behind the BBB that are going to go to his desk that I haven't been tracking that may be with this. So
interesting stuff there, Jason. So in your estimation of studying this, and when I'm sure you even know this from hearing me on the show and talking with me with this kind of stuff. I'm like so averse to any kind of government intervention with this stuff. Regulation can be a good thing, and that's what I'm really trying to figure out here. In your estimation, is this overreach? Or is this simply regulation that could actually end up being a good thing? For something like we've talked about, cryptocurrency is like the Wild West, so maybe regulation could be a good thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it defines what a payment stablecoin is and allows the exchanges to finally review, the SEC view, hey, cryptocurrency in the light of regulation. That's what they needed, because the SEC before battled with the idea of it's this, it's that. Right. What is it defined? They can't define it. It's better when our government can define it so that everybody can act accordingly in compliance. And that's where this bill is the pro side of it. The government overreach. When is the government ever not overreaching with anything they pass? So let's just, I know for a fact that there will be overreach, of course, with this, but it's moving us more, it's closer to a biblical side that we'll end with here. So I'm going to move on to stablecoin issuers and their IPOs. So the Genius Act defines a payment stablecoin as a digital asset that maintains a fixed value through backing by fiat currency or other secure reserves. I kind of went over this before. A Federal Reserve Governor, Christopher Waller, said, I'm going to repeat his quote that I did from April as well, fiat currency in one country is converted first into a US dollar stablecoin. Then that stablecoin is transferred to another individual. And then finally, the stablecoin is converted back into the local fiat currency at its destination. Think of this as if I was traveling to Paris and I have a stablecoin and they accept it there. It's instantaneous without any fees for conversions. So you can look at this as a world application of global banking happening instantaneously without all the fees. But I'm still using my US dollars without any exchanges or any price adjustments based of that exchange and what they use in that local area. So this will reduce the complexity of a series of banking networks, improving the transparency, cost, and timeliness. So it's fast, it's more secure, and it's without the fees that the banks and the traditional global system has now. So in a simple way, payment stable coins would replace dollars as an option for checking out. And this bill will legalize private stablecoin payment issuers. So think Amazon or Walmart. I like to think of it as Amazon has its own coin. Maybe they do something, in my own opinion, maybe they do something like a cash back option from the Amazon credit card and you get one of the Amazon coins to use. It's backed by the dollar or whatever that's there. This could be a way where they implement it in your everyday life of what you're doing already today. So that's where I see this going, but I could be wrong. So all of this, I could be wrong with my opinion and how I'm looking at it, but it's very interesting. Let me talk about a issuer that had an IPO recently. So CoinDesk data talks about the market capitalization of stablecoins hit an all-time high this year at $252 billion, up 22% this year, of course, at the same time that the Genius Act passed the Senate. So it's pretty interesting. So there's two market shares or market value right now. The number one market value of the payment stable coins is the dollar tether. So it's USDT. So the majority of stablecoins are using that dollar tether, or think about it as pegged to the dollar. So we already know the denomination of what that one's using is the dollar's the number one. There's also USDC, or think dollar coin. So that's the second largest stablecoin market value is using the USDC. Now there's an IPO issuer called Circle. This is not part of the FISM strategy, by the way. I'm just talking about what's happening in the news. So this company Circle went public on the New York Stock Exchange in June of 2025. Its successful IPO is now up over 700%, which signaled a strong market demand with institutional support. So that institutional support really caught my eye for the regulated digital assets. Also, what Circle's success has come from is through its partnerships with Visa, MasterCard, and a crypto exchange called Coinbase. So the direct competitors to payment stablecoins is the transaction companies like Visa and MasterCard that charge fees. So they are partnering with Circle to speed up the integration of stablecoins into mainstream finance. So it's being implemented, I feel like, as fast as AI was and is, right? AI is being forced on us and it's just everywhere now. Everybody's including it. This is showing some language of supporting that speed and that integration. So what also Circle does is it challenges the global banking secure system called SWIFT to communicate and authenticate transactions, basically global. So Circle would be a faster with reduction in costs, so zero fees and more secure. So I find this interesting that the competition is actually partnering with this specific company, and that's where that success has come from. Now there's plenty of other private, private stablecoin payment stablecoin issuers that are out there and exist. I was just using this example as a very successful one with institutional support. So we're seeing this speed up pretty quickly. I keep thinking of it like AI. It's just happening really fast and going really fast. And now that the government wants to open up the doors to it with the Genius Act and this administration wants to sign it, this is happening pretty quickly, a lot faster than I probably would have expected. So, especially for our government.
Jason, that's great stuff, brother. Man, we've got about a minute left here. And so I don't know if we'll have time to talk about this really through a biblical lens here, but just give us a quick snapshot of some things that we need to be aware of.
Well, I've always asked the question, I may be wrong, is how's the Bible come? The Bible is always going to be true. How does that happen? How does it get to this road? Now that this is passed through, the government wants to accept this. They didn't kill the bill. So how do we get to the one world currency? I would say we just keep watching it with eager eyes, right? Be excited for, our blessed hope. And is this how we get to the one world currency there? So I think this is exciting in that sense from biblical aspect, not so much the government aspect of overreach.
Jason, that's so well said, brother. It's especially exciting when you realize as a Christian whose the victory is, that it belongs to Jesus Christ. That's well said. Man, I really appreciate you coming on with me today, brother. It's always fun to have you on. That's Jason MacDowell, folks, regular Financial Issues contributor. We love having him on. We got more financial issues coming up right after this. We'll be back.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later, they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily, and my mom and I moved houses. But I started to discover pornography that helped me develop behavior that was rebellious, immoral, and bad. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. I really liked the Bible teachings, how they mixed them with games and fun. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He forgave me and changed my behavior. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Thanks so much for sticking with us here, folks. Always love Jason coming on the show. I know you all do too. Somebody said, Lisa said Jason is a, what do you call, a smart cookie.
Smart cookie,
he is a smart cookie. Absolutely.
Which I don't know what that means. I hear that phrase all the time.
That just means he's
what makes a cookie
cohesively good in every area. So, no, great to have Jason on. I love that. Good to see George, Dave and Darlene, James from South Carolina. Good to see you, Matt in Georgia. Good to see you, Matt, this morning. Of course, Lisa, Anthony. Anthony, I'm glad you were satisfied with the answer to your question, brother. Thanks for asking it, man. It was great. Nelson from Louisiana. Hello, Nelson. Robert in Texas. George in North Carolina. I apologize if I said your name already, George. Uncle John, great to see you as well, of course, brother. And Eddie from Tennessee as well. Eddie, great to see you as well, my friend. All right, folks, let's
See on Facebook
take a look.
Also, I just want to leave these guys out.
Yep.
You got Ronnie, Brian, Gene, Steve, our very own Darlene's watching, and of course, Alejandro.
Awesome.
So,
Great,
hi, guys.
great to see you all. Folks, we do try to give shout outs to anyone who comments and says hello. So if you want to get a shout out on the show, just comment and say hello, and we'll give you a hi back. It's always great to see you. Quickly here, the markets have opened in mixed territory. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 are mirroring each other. The Dow is about 0.5% positive, S&P 0.5% negative, and the NASDAQ is down now around almost 0.2% negative here. So that's what the markets are looking like, folks. Let's hear now from Craig Haugaard with today's Ag Update, and then we'll come back, talk a little bit more about what's going on in the economy as it pertains to the markets as well. Here's Craig Haugaard.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for July 1st. Yesterday's USDA report was neutral for corn. Planted acres and quarterly stocks came right in line with the average trade guesses. Planted acres were estimated at 95.2 million acres versus the trade guess of 95.35 million. This is the highest corn acreage planted since 2013. The report noted that 3.6 million acres are left to plant as of June 16th. December corn was a penny and a half lower for the day at 425.5. The report leaned to the berry side for soybeans as June 1 stocks came in a little heavier than expected, while planted acres at 83.4 million were well within the range of trade estimates. November beans were 2.25 cents higher at the close at $10.27 per bushel. Wheat saw a neutral to bearish report. Total wheat acres came in as expected at 45.5 million. That's up 130,000 from March estimates, but down 600,000 from year-ago numbers. Now, much of that loss was in spring wheat, where we have the fewest planted acres since 1972. June 1st stocks came in 10 million bushels above trade expectations and 154 million above last year's numbers. Minneapolis July wheat was 7.25 cents lower at 6.20 3/4. Kansas City declined by 7 cents to close at 5.26 3/4. And Chicago was 2.5 cents lower at 5.38 1/4. Cotton futures saw their winning streak come to a close. December futures ended the session 119 points lower at 68.13. Livestock futures were mixed. August live cattle were 57.5 cents higher at $213.87 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle rose by $2.72.5, ending the session at $310.62.5 per hundred. We had August lean hog futures $2.72.5 lower at $107.50 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures saw their rally extend. We had July futures closing up 21 points, ending the day at 17.77. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
So, folks, we just looked at the markets. Yesterday, again, we had a good day, and part of that was because our neighbors directly to the north of us, Canada, has decided to come to the table. So, U.S. and Canada playing nice, it appears, Sam.
They're playing nice. Well, they're Canadians. They're supposed to play nice. That's right. Kind of their whole shtick.
Absolutely. They certainly are. And you know what? They get the benefit, too, of being directly north neighbors with the most powerful, prosperous nation in history. So, they kind of have no choice but to play nice, I feel.
Who else is going to help them?
That's exactly right.
Moose?
That's exactly right. What can you tell us there, Sam, about what happened?
Yes, so this was the big story from over the weekend, bleeding into the markets this week as stocks did edge a bit higher on Monday upon the news that U.S. and Canada resumed trade talks, with the S&P 500 setting a new record high as of yesterday. Those trade talks resumed after Canada said it was scrapping its planned digital services tax, which would have affected American tech companies as well as all other tech companies around the world doing business in Canada. What this tax was, it was a 3% tax set to begin on Monday, and it would have applied to both foreign and domestic tech companies making more than $20 million a year. But here's the really insidious thing about it that Trump really didn't like. The tax was also going to retroactively apply back to 2022, which would have cost U.S. tech companies, not even knowing about this until now, $2 billion. For what? For nothing. Yeah. Well, Trump said this was a non-starter and said he was going to cut off negotiations unless they got rid of this. They did. Now those talks have resumed. By the way, the White House also says it expects other countries will soon follow suit and end their digital services taxes as well.
Sam, it's really good to see here. I have a suspicion this is far better for Canada than it is necessarily for us, but it is still good for us as well, I think. But nonetheless, good to see Canada coming to the table as well.
I'm actually surprised more countries weren't raising a stink over this, especially over that retroactive tax.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty insane stuff. So really good stuff there, Sam. Well, speaking of playing nice, unfortunately, while Trump is able to play nice with Canada, it seems not so much with his old buddy Elon Musk. Once again, there's another kerfluffle amid those two. What's going on there, Sam?
Yeah, originally this story was going to be that they were making nice, but this morning things kind of changed. So what's going on here? Let's get all the drama out of the way. Well, actually not out of the way. The whole thing is drama. Musk on Saturday once again attacked the BBB, the big beautiful bill, or as I like to call it, the BBB.
That's right.
He called it utterly insane and destructive. He also attacked it in particular for cutting subsidies for wind and solar projects while keeping other, quote, handouts in place. That real issue is he just doesn't like subsidies in general, but he's annoyed that we're keeping some and getting rid of others, particularly the ones that harm his company, because he's really tied to green energy.
Makes sense. Sam, by the way, I agree with him. I don't like subsidies either. I mean, he's certainly not wrong there, but it's tricky stuff.
I'm in the same boat. I'm not a fan of subsidies at all. I will say if we're going to have subsidies, though, probably low on that priority list is green energy, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
He said they're the industries of the future, but honestly, if it's the industry of the future, why does it rely on government funding for 2 decades? When we were switching over to automobiles from horse and buggy, I don't remember a whole lot of government handouts for that.
Nope, certainly not. Certainly not.
Well, at first, Trump kind of played nice for all this. He called Elon a wonderful guy, but Elon continued his rants on X, saying he'd even threatened to help primary Republicans who vote for the big beautiful bill, and that seemed to be the straw that broke the Trump's back. He responded with a devastating post on Truth Social saying, quote, Elon may get more subsidies than any human being in history by far, and without these subsidies, Elon would probably have to close up shop and head back to his home in South Africa. No more rocket launches, satellites, or electric car production, and our country would save a fortune. Perhaps we should have Doge take a good hard look at this. Big money to be saved.
Wow. That's a low blow from Trump there, pulling Doge into this. Boy, it's tricky stuff, Sam. I see where Elon's coming from. Personally, I like the slash. If someone says to me, hey, we're slashing government funding, pretty much I say, where do I sign? Now, obviously there's certain things to be slashed and not slashed. I get that. But usually I'm like, yeah, I'm all for it. But with the big, beautiful bill, there's going to be some give and take. And this thing needs to be passed one way or the other. And it's a shame to see it. I mean, we even talked yesterday, our friend at the ministry, Tony Perkins, shared some problems with the current version of the bill and how perhaps it's not as devastating to Planned Parenthood as we hoped it would be. But listen, it still needs to pass one way or the other. I think these two big ego guys as they are, Sam, they need to sit down in private and work this stuff out. Enough of the public nonsense.
I think what needs to be asked to Elon, because actually on the principles I agree with him, but I think someone needs to sit down and ask him, how? How is this going to happen? Because you have to wrangle all the cats in the Senate and the House and get them to agree on something. And obviously, the way the world is right now, the way the American people think, the way the politicians think, you're not going to get rid of all the subsidies. So how in your world, Elon, is this supposed to work? He's a businessman. So he's used to snapping his fingers, saying jump, and people say how high. And that's not the way politics works. There's a lot of wheeling and dealing and sausage making. And when you see it for the first time, it can be kind of jarring. And honestly, I think that threw Trump off in his first term because he came from that business world. So he was kind of surprised how sticky it can be. And you have to play a different type of ball game when it comes to politics versus the business world.
You really do. And Sam, I don't think Trump has lost his businessman in him, but I do think he's learned, for better or worse. I
think he's learned how to adapt the businessman to the political world.
He's learned to play the political game. It is interesting, Sam, speaking of this idea of not being able to unite, I do think Trump and Musk is kind of a typecast of one of the biggest problems with the right. The left, as much as we disagree with them, they got one thing that they do really well, which is uniting against a common enemy. For some reason, we cannot do that. Why is that? It's
I think
easy.
an inherent flaw, but it's also a virtue in the right, because conservatives, by their very nature, are more individualistic.
Yeah, exactly.
As opposed to the left, which is by its nature collectivistic.
Yeah.
So you're going to have all the left following orders and the right's fighting with itself, because we all have independent ideas and not really have a consistent ideology, because each person's their own person.
Yeah,
You're not a cog in the machine.
Exactly. That idea of individual freedom, it's such a good thing. We need to have that. At the same time, we also need to learn how to come together with, even in minor disagreements, to be able to put those aside to fight a common enemy. I think it's a good lesson for politics. I think it's even a better lesson for the church, as we're talking about fighting this common foe here, putting aside some of these lesser differences for the glory of God. A good lesson for us, folks, to end our show. Boy, what a great show it was with you all. God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. It was great to be here with you all. Until next time, remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with what God has given to us. God bless you all.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.